Well, this one has certainly been a long time coming. I've finally released my Mortal Kombat 2 episode. And if you're wondering if it's still good today, well, I'm not going to tell you now. Watch the fucking episode.
If you ever spent any amount of time in a 90s arcade, then you'd know that Mortal Kombat 2 was perhaps one of the most infamous and popular games of all time. So much so that there'd be lines of kids vying to play it, miniature towers of quarters or tokens placed on the cabinet signifying placeholders for the next challenger, and die-hard players would come equipped with stapled stacks of move lists, photocopied from GamePro or similar in an effort to gain an edge. But perhaps the most harrowing aspect of Mortal Kombat 2 wasn't the game itself, but rather the sheer number of onlookers buzzing about the cabinet. I for one was always too nervous as a kid to even contemplate playing it during the heights of its popularity, what with the crowds it pulled. Luckily, Mortal Kombat 2 would be ported to pretty much every console in existence, and we had it on Sega Genesis. So there are a number of factors contributing to Mortal Kombat's success, but the most obvious and popular one was undoubtedly the blood and gore. This made the game insanely popular with kids, much to the disdain of parents. Of course, there were plenty of other fighting games around, such as Street Fighter, but it lacked the violent edginess that Mortal Kombat supplied. In fact, Mortal Kombat 2's arrival would signify the first truly worthy competitor to the then insurmountable Street Fighter 2. What's more, Mortal Kombat had something no other game had at the time: fatalities, ultra-violent finishing moves that were both impressive in display and execution, as precise yet swift button combination inputs were required to pull them off. But it was definitely worth the effort of learning these finishing moves because these things were mind-blowingly sensational. Pulling off a successful fatality guaranteed your superiority in the Mortal Kombat arena and the arcade. It was the ultimate bragging right. Typically, my friend and I stuck to playing the first Mortal Kombat at the arcades. It was overshadowed by the vastly superior and popular Mortal Kombat 2, which also meant you wouldn't have countless eyes burning their judgment through the back of your skull as you played. But on home console, it was a whole different story. My sister and I played Mortal Kombat 2 incessantly. We knew the game back to front, and any one of our friends who chose to challenge us would be dispatched swiftly and without mercy. While the Sega Genesis version was the one we undoubtedly played the most, there's a fairly large disparity between the home console versions and the arcade original, whether we care to realize it or not. And likewise, even between the Super Nintendo and Genesis version, the general consensus when comparing these two was that the Super Nintendo version was vastly superior. Playing them both now, I can confirm that the Super Nintendo version certainly does outclass the Genesis one. However, I still prefer the sound of Sega's version, which is undoubtedly attributed to nostalgia. But it's always best to go to the source, the arcade version being the definitive experience. The home console versions did a fine job of recreating Mortal Kombat, but the arcade version is the real meat and potatoes experience, and what an experience it is, even to this day. Produced by Midway and released in 1993, Mortal Kombat 2 was designed and created by the near-mythical Ed Boon and John Tobias, and ran on the Midway T-Unit arcade cabinet. The unprecedented success of the first game meant that people were already losing their minds about Mortal Kombat 2 thanks to the anticipation of pre-release hysteria, which proved to be warranted as Mortal Kombat 2 was a huge commercial success, spawning multiple sequels, countless clones, endless merchandise, a feature film in '95, and at the time of writing this, another film which has just been released. The anticipation of the home versions also spawned Mortal Monday, which took place on September 3rd, 1994, propelled further by several successful TV spots such as this. Mortal Kombat 2 improved on the original in every conceivable way. It increased the character roster from 7 to 12, featured multiple fatalities for each fighter, introduced new finishes such as babalities and friendships, improved the visuals immensely by utilizing a superior color palette, and introduced parallax scrolling for the arenas. And let's not discount the sound here. Mortal Kombat 2 utilized the superior DCS sound system in its cabinet, and man does it sound spectacular. Rich, beefy music and sound effects propelled the game to even further heights. In 2012, Ed Boon placed creating Mortal Kombat 2 among his best Mortal Kombat memories. Special care was taken during the programming process to give the game a good feel, with Boon simulating elements such as gravity into the video game design. To further set it apart from its peers, Mortal Kombat 2 continued to use the digitized sprite technique from the first game, improving upon that still by utilizing a $20,000 broadcast quality Sony camera to record the actors instead of the standard high 8 camera that its predecessor used. Initially, a grey background was used during motion capture, the videotape footage then processed by a computer, with select frames of the grey background being removed in order to create the sprites. Eventually, towards the end of the game's development, the grey screen would be superseded by a blue screen so that the footage could be processed directly onto a computer. This was a simpler process that achieved the same result. Despite utilizing digitized graphics, a lot of post-editing was still required by the Mortal Kombat team. Actors were sprayed with water to give them a sweaty, glistening quality, with certain physical aspects being highlighted to create greater muscle definition, which Tobias thought set their game apart from others. Special moves like Shang Tsung's morphing were achieved by computer, while other aspects of the game such as fatality animations were hand-drawn. Clay sculptures were rendered for the non-human character Kintaro. This would be turned into a 12-inch latex miniature used for stop-motion filming. This is the reason Kintaro looks as lifelike as the rest of the characters. The effort and attention to detail utilized to achieve this certainly didn't go unnoticed. As with every aspect of this game, the gameplay has also been improved upon. Characters are more versatile, have more moves, and the overall gameplay is a lot more satisfying and challenging, especially when combined with these bone-cracking sound effects. And of course, the fatalities are a huge highlight. There are also stage-specific fatalities, such as uppercutting your opponent into ceiling spikes or an acid pool.
So the challenge and difficulty was dialed all the way up to 10 for Mortal Kombat 2, and while the first and second rounds against the AI will be pretty easy, by the third round, it starts to get not so easy. And if you have the misfortune of going up against characters like Liu Kang and Melina, you will fucking die over and over again.
All the original characters make their return from the first game save for Sonya and Kano. Newcomers such as Kitana, Melina, Reptile, and Johnny Cage make their debut among others. But as always, and even to this day, Sub-Zero remains my favorite. There's just something deeply satisfying about freezing these motherfuckers and shattering the shit out of them.
So circling back to Sonya and Kano, there's actually a very valid reason for why these two fighters were omitted from Mortal Kombat 2. And it's actually because of Mortal Kombat 1. I didn't know that the Mortal Kombat 1 cabinet had an auditing system inside of it. And this system, as you may or may not have guessed, kept track of which fighters were the most popular, which players would pick who the most. And unfortunately, Sonya and Kano drew the short straw, so they were left out of the game. They would, however, find their way back in Mortal Kombat 3.
Hello, baby. Did you miss me?
Hot on the heels of the first game, Liu Kang has won the Mortal Kombat tournament. With Prince Goro supposedly dead, a disgraced Shang Tsung begs Shao Kahn for one more chance to defeat the heroes of Earthrealm. This time luring the heroes to Outworld. With a home field advantage, Shang Tsung convinces the ruler of Outworld that his victory will be all but guaranteed. Apart from continuing Liu Kang's journey in Mortal Kombat 2, the game also offers non-canonical endings for each of the other warriors too. This is especially welcome since there's a high probability that many players don't main Liu Kang, such as myself. Given the opportunity, I could probably talk about this game for hours. It really is the perfect old school fighting game. Hell, it's the perfect fighting game, and is without a doubt still good today. Mortal Kombat 2 remains a challenging and just plain fun fighting game, with endless replayability even 28 years on.
Well, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please leave a like, comment, and consider subscribing. It really does help me to make more videos. Until next time, keep playing retro.